The spread offense goes back many decades and is often credited to Johnny Orr, who was the head coach of Michigan from 1968 to 1980 and of Iowa State from 1980 to 1994. In this video, we'll focus on the current coaches running the spread, with a main emphasis on Brad Underwood. Underwood has used the offense heavily throughout his coaching career, including with his current program at Illinois. Not only will you see film of Underwood's teams running the offense, but also pieces of interviews where he discusses the offense.
One thing that we do in this, and spacing is a real big key, but we put 5 players. The 4 spots out here on the perimeter are all interchangeable. You'll usually see our 4 or 5 man play in the high post, although we do have some times that we will run different players in there based on what the offense does.
In addition to Underwood, we'll take quick looks at other high major coaches implementing their version of the offense. Dana Altman at Oregon and Mike Boynton at Oklahoma State. The spread starts with an alignment similar to the Princeton. 2 players are in the slots and 2 players are on the wings. Notice how the high and tight spacing allows for empty corners.
We try to get the ball reversed and get it to the wing. This starts the initiation of the offense. The one thing that we do, we always cut to the rim with our first cutter. We're always looking for the easy layup.
The offense is initiated by the pass to the wing, starting with the first cutter. There are 2 main points of emphasis on this cut. Pace or speed is the first one. The cutter is getting a running start at his defender, so he can use that to his advantage by cutting full speed to the basket.
Sprinting a cut.
Hard cuts to the basket.
Sprint. And if they don't sprint, we have a method and practice that we try to encourage that.
The other emphasis is the defender's line of vision. If the defender has his head turned away from the passer, Illinois players are instructed to throw the ball to the rim.
The defender's got his head turned. This group knew to throw it, no matter what. And as soon as they get their head turned, just put it up there.
Another option for the first cutter in the spread is to rescreen. This is the very first example of several examples we'll see where the offense can be catered to the strengths and weaknesses of certain players. For Oklahoma State, Phil Forte was one of the best shooters in the country. He would take a couple steps like normal towards the basket and then come back to the three-point line instead.
As this first cutter cuts, he gets to the rim and he fills out to the corner. Our middle man, high post man, then goes to the elbow, and this becomes a read for our second cutter. We usually take him low and run him to the block.
After the first cut occurs, a second cutter from the weak side wing immediately follows. In Underwood's offense, that second cutter usually cuts to the ball side block. Because of the angle of the cut and the overall spacing, the second cut is almost never for an immediate lob, but it can be used for a post-up. The second cutter can also have the option to cut to the top of the key instead. Underwood's teams usually cut to the block, but Dana Altman at Oregon runs the spread, and his teams usually cut to the top of the key with the second cutter. More on Altman and Oregon coming later in the video. A special set play Underwood will run is where the second cutter sets a back screen lob for the 5-man. It's a good fit this season, especially for Illinois, given Kofi Coburn's size and athleticism.
We now then get into a set, which we like to call the pinch post part of the offense, which is very basic. We have our 5-man. We'll just say the 3-man went through. The 4-man was the second cutter. The 2 had the ball, and our point guard was here. So we get into this set a great deal. What this allows us to do is read. We'll take a post up if we have it. We love to throw this pass if we can. What we read as coaches is how X5, which is a defender on the postman, how he has guarded the cuts. Usually teams will play soft, so we like to throw this pass. We try to have a great deal of emphasis put on this area right here. We call that the elbow, the pinch post. As soon as that pass comes off, we like to play two-man game with a hard cut over the top, hand it off. The five-man then rolls, and we drag the ball as deep as we can if we don't have a layup, and then we bounce it and we look for our post up here.
After the first and second cutters, notice the spacing on the strong side of the floor. It's a triangle, the same spacing as in the triangle offense created by Tex Winter and popularized by Phil Jackson in the NBA. That triangle spacing on the strong side of the court naturally leads to two-man game on the weak side of the court, called the pinch post. This is the same pinch post that Jackson used for Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and Carmelo Anthony. In the spread, when the first cutter and second cutter aren't open, the ball will then somehow get reversed to the pinch post. It can be skipped directly, or it can go station to station. These two players work together in a variety of different ways to create shots out of the pinch post. For instance, the post could set a flare screen, the guard could dribble handoff. We could really do a full video on just the different options out of the pinch post. But here you'll see several of them, and we'll come back to it later on in this video to discuss the potential negatives of the pinch post.
As the ball's in the air, Trent's reading this. He is off this screen 100 miles an hour.
We're just getting started with the spread offense, but I wanted to interrupt for 45 seconds to tell you about Hoop Vision Plus. HV Plus is a subscription newsletter where we break the game down through X's and O's and analytics. I was previously the video coordinator at New Mexico State, and we played Brad Underwood's Illinois team. Before releasing this video you're watching right now, all HV Plus subscribers received an article showing the analytics scouting report we created against the spread offense in preparation for our upset win at New Mexico State. That's the type of insider access you get by joining. Analysis that helps you watch the game smarter and challenges how you think about the game. Now right back to the video.
Understand there's nothing the defense can do. There's nothing the defense can do that's right in this offense. If they pressure you, the high post should be open. If the high post isn't open, just be poised and patient, run dribble entry.
Dribble entry is a part of the spread for when a defense is denying the wing pass. The ball handler can wave the wing through and initiate the offense via the dribble instead. That triggers the normal cutting action, and then a pin down for the player who is initially waved through. We've already seen different parts of the spread that contain a counter for a lob or a back screen option, and that's the case again in dribble entry. Instead of getting a pin down, the player waved through can set a back screen for a lob. Just like the dribble entry is a pressure release if the defense is denying, another pressure release is to hit the 5-man. That triggers cuts to the basket from the 2 players in the slots. If it's not initially open, the cutters will then cross screen for each other. We've already talked about Phil Forte's shooting ability, and Oklahoma State had so much shooting in general, they would flare screen for 3-pointers after hitting the 5.
But we have a counter for everything the defense does.
There's nothing the defense can do that's right.
A constant theme from Underwood regarding his offense is that the defense simply can't take everything away. Any way an opponent chooses to guard it, the spread theoretically has a read, a call, or a counter against that coverage. While this technically may be right, it's based on a flawed premise of what a defense should actually be trying to accomplish. Unless there's a severe talent disparity, the job of a modern defense isn't necessarily to take every single action away. The more holistic approach is to evaluate all the actions of an offense, find what leads to the most inefficient results, and then create a scheme or coverage which lures the offense into those inefficient results. So as a defense, you might not have to take everything away from the spread to be successful. Watch Rodney Miller guard Coburn here. On the first and second cutters, he sags off and protects the basket. On the pinch post, he's dropped back and protects the basket again. Defenses that are able to stall the cutting action naturally force Illinois into the pinch post. And like we previously mentioned, NBA teams have won championships with offenses formulated around that 2-man game in the pinch post. But it's not the easiest action to be efficient with in the modern game. The 2-man game occurs at the elbow area, and it produces a lot of inefficient mid-range jumpers. When you have a player like Coburn, it only magnifies the problem. A defense will live with a 7-foot bruiser like him taking 15-foot jumpers all game long. The goal for the offense in the pinch post is to get downhill and put pressure on the rim, but it's easier said than done. Here you can see Arizona's game plan against the pinch post. Anytime an Illinois player tried to get downhill, Arizona flooded to the ball and forced a pass out, and then flew around on the weak side to rotate and intercept that pass.
It's not a set where Johnny goes to screen for Jimmy and that it's more of a flow. Everybody's got a different position.
And you're reacting to what you see.
Absolutely, and they're the same. So it's based on passing. We've spent a tremendous amount of time passing the basketball. Ball reversal. Good things happen when you reverse the ball. In most offenses. This one in particular, you get ball movements, you've got a lot of opportunities. And again, we try not to let the ball ever stick. We continue to run this over and over. If we can get 3 to 4 turns in a possession, we feel like we're going to get a great shot every time.
Ball reversal is an extremely important part of the spread that can help mitigate the inefficiencies of the pinch post. A Brad Underwood team will run the overall continuity of the spread, first cutter, second cutter, pinch post, multiple times in the same possession. Here's an example where both the cutters and the pinch post aren't open. But on the ball reversal, they go right back into the continuity. And this time, the cutter is open. The logic behind reversing the ball and running spread as a continuity is pretty simple. Underwood often talks about targeting the weakest defender on the court. With more ball movements and cuts, now all 5 defenders are being forced to guard different actions. On the other side of things, Dana Altman does run the spread at Oregon, but not really as a continuity. At a coaching clinic, he talked about the differences between his offense and Underwood's and his reason for those differences.
Brad Underwood, Oklahoma State, and now Illinois runs this, and they run the heck out. They run better than we do. Brad probably runs it better than any of us. They stick with us. You know, one of the things, and we used to run it great exclusively. Now we've had to go to more ball screen action because everybody we recruit, you know, the first question is, are you going to put me in ball screens, coach? And I don't want to lie to you totally, so I say, yeah, we'll put you in ball screens. So one a game counts, all right? So, but we've got to put them in ball screens because that's what the NBA does. We've got to get everybody ready for the NBA. And so, coach, am I going to be putting ball screens? So we've gone to a lot more ball screens. And, you know, I think right now, for college basketball, you probably ought to ball screen.
Oregon will rarely ever run the spread action twice in the same possession, and oftentimes not even once. On this play, the ball gets reversed to the wing, and it looks like they are getting ready for first cut or second cut. But instead, they move their 5-man to the baseline and space the floor for a straight line drive to the basket. Whether Altman thinks it's the best thing to do, or he's just doing it for recruiting purposes, Oregon's offense has shifted towards ball screens, dribble drives, and spacing concepts. Ironically, the spread offense we've been talking about throughout this video doesn't necessarily have optimally spread out spacing. Its name is kind of misleading.
And we're in a world where everybody ball screens. My 3 years at Stephen F. Austin, we set the fewest ball screens in the country. That played to our advantage because it became very difficult to guard when teams are used to just guarding ball screens. So we hope that's the case this year as we get into it. We do ball screen some, mostly in transition, but in the half court it'll be a little more ball movement and player movement happening simultaneously. Can cause the defense to move. And we look for the other team's worst defender and really try to pick on them.
It's completely opposite from a lot of the ball screen stuff that happens today. Because usually in the ball screen stuff, you stand in your space.
During Underwood's only year at Oklahoma State, they finished #1 in the entire country in adjusted offensive efficiency. That team was led by one of the best players in the country, their point guard Juwan Evans, who finished 3rd in the NCAA in assist rate. The spread offense really isn't the best fit for a ball-dominant point guard. And while Oklahoma State still did run the spread, a lot of their possessions looked like this. An early ball screen for Evans leading directly to a high percentage shot for himself or a teammate. In fact, in Oklahoma State's NCAA tournament game against Michigan, they only scored 2 baskets directly off the spread the entire game. Not all of their games that season were like that, but it shows the potential conflict between older motion-based offenses and ball screens. Motion-based offenses use movement and ball reversals to create advantages against the defense. But the rise of the three-point shot has added new ways to create advantages. Motion still works, but so does spacing. Here, by just setting a simple ball screen, an advantage is created where the defense has to figure out how to stop the ball. 20 years ago, you might do that just by sinking into the paint and living with jump shots. But with our newer understanding of efficiency, spacing and shooters can distort a defense all on its own. Sticking with that same Oklahoma State team, Underwood would run ball screens early in the possession and then flow into the spread if they didn't immediately lead to a shot. This is theoretically the best of both worlds, and it's very similar to how the current coach of Oklahoma State, Mike Boynton, runs his offense. Boynton worked on Underwood's staff and uses the spread maybe the second most of anyone in the country. While merging ball screens with spread is intriguing, it takes away some of what makes the spread effective in the first place. Sometimes Illinois will run a ball screen set and then flow into the spread with less than 15 seconds left on the shot clock. That's probably not enough time to get multiple ball reversals and break down the defense. When running spread in late clock situations, it increases the probability of having to settle for the pinch post. And like we talked about before, late clock pinch post has a tendency to lead to tough mid-range jumpers. So there's a natural trade-off that emerges between running the spread in the way it was truly intended and between incorporating ball screens. Illinois will also do the inverse. They'll start with the spread, looking for the first cut or second cutter, and then flow into ball screen situations in late clock situations after that. It's a way to potentially better maximize the skill sets of Ayo Dosunmu and Kofi Coburn. This season, you'll also see Illinois at times just move away from the spread altogether. Here's a double ball screen set Underwood has run out of horns, and another go-to this season is a weave ball screen look around the perimeter. The takeaway here isn't that ball screens are absolutely the answer. Offenses that rely solely on ball screens and spacing have their positives and negatives too. The broader takeaway is to recognize that our understanding of offensive efficiency has changed, and we should not only challenge our offensive systems, schemes, and actions, but innovate as well. And that innovation is pretty clearly happening throughout the world of basketball as the game moves forward. If you enjoyed this longer form deep dive, you might be interested in checking out the Hoop Vision store. We have long form videos and ebooks designed to help fans watch smarter and coaches coach smarter. Currently, we have a video all about the different adjustments coaches make on baseline out of bounds plays up for sale. It looks at both the offensive and defensive tactics used in those situations. We also have an hour-long video up on the Blue Bloods. That one looks at the offensive X's and O's of Roy Williams, Bill Self, John Calipari, and Mike Krzyzewski. The ways they've evolved over the past 10 years, the ways they've stayed the same, and how the four coaches compare to one another. Use the promo code YouTube to get 20% off either of those videos. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned to the channel for new videos here all season long.